Hi, I'm Rachel Abbasi. Welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. As always, thanks for spending time with me.
Hello and happy day. When I was in high school, I was in drama, believe it or not. And I loved it. And I wanted to pursue it in college, but it was going to get in the way of my drinking. Unfortunately, I did not pursue it. And it's one of those things that I always look back on and think, I wish I would have done that because I was good at it. I had gotten awards and stuff in high school, and it felt good. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. So in life, I'm just a little over dramatic, and that's how it's ironed out for me. But my my drama teacher told me that I had really good timing, and that is what makes people be able to do like improv is to have good timing, and you're very aware of your surroundings and able to pause at just the right times and respond at just the right times. And I always clearly I'm going to be 52 this year, and clearly that has stayed with me that I got that really nice compliment. Well, when I got into my sobriety program, I learned about how timing is everything. People say that all the time. Timing is everything. Well, I learned in the steps of my program about timing, and I thought timing was a complicated um, thing. But when I continue on through this program and I talk so much about the pause, I feel like good judgment and timing and knowing when an action needs to be deferred starts with the pause. Um, I think in sobriety, early on, I was very much focused on learning how to be honest, courageous, and learning how to behave. But as I moved through the steps and started to implement those in my life, I began to learn a little more about patience, restraint, and timing. Um, Step 9 specifically stands out to me as the one that teaches us how to make things right, but do it with good judgment and timing. Sometimes the wisest action is not the immediate action. And that's how I had lived my life, immediate gratification. Just because something likely needs to be done doesn't mean that it needs to be done right now. Um, so as I have lived through my active alcoholism, I felt like every emotion that I felt required some sort of immediate action. If A lot of times my action was to write a poem, and I'm so happy that it was. It did not keep me 100% away from behaving inappropriately and sometimes, but it did seem to be a good deterrent for me when I was super sad or emotional, I would go in my room and shut the door and I would write. And that gave me some sort of immediate gratification. It relieved me of how I felt was I didn't have anywhere else to go. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't have anyone that I felt 100% connected to and safe with to talk about the extreme nature of my emotions. I mean, I was, people would tell me that I was just sensitive, but it was more than that. I was extremely emotional. There was this emotional urgency that I felt when I was so overwhelmed by sadness or anger, I guess. I mean, it's been so long, I don't remember. It doesn't stick out to me a lot of times, any anger, but I'm sure I was. I think, though, that the reason why anger doesn't stand out to me is because my anger um, was translated into self-pity almost immediately. So luckily, back when I was in high school, we didn't have cell phones. So I didn't have the ability to send an angry text or an emotional text. I mean, I can't even imagine what I might have said to some of these boys that I was, it's totally in love with, had I had a text, the ability to text. So I'm glad that that wasn't the case. But today's today's environment, I think that there's even more opportunity to behave in an unhealthy way and not be able to see the consequences because everything's happening so fast now. You feel something, it's so easy to send a text. It's so easy to go on Facebook and respond to somebody else's nonsense. And so it turns out that everybody's nonsense is talking to each other. And there is all of these conversations that before cell phones and social media that we thought of as difficult conversations that people actually, and I remember when I was working, and this is after cell phones came out, but we had training for how to handle difficult conversations. Um, it's really just exploded into this unmanageable arena where we don't pause. And it's not surprising, when we are always looking for the easier, softer way or the quickest way to end an emotion. Um, but not every feeling requires an action. I mean, that's pretty obvious. I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. Um, there's many regrets that begin with, I felt like I had to do something. I felt like I had to say something. But what I heard a couple days ago in one of my meetings was, and I've heard this before, but for some reason it really struck me this time. And the person said, if it's a good idea today, it'll be a good idea tomorrow. And that is so applicable to me because I remember when I was working in this last job before I retired, I remember working and having an idea. Okay. Those of you who know me, when I say I have an idea, people usually respond with, uh-oh. So I was at work and I had an idea. And I wanted to tell my boss right away because I wanted to be applauded right away. And my boss used to tell me something similar to if it's a good idea today, it's a good idea tomorrow. That's not, I don't remember him saying that specifically, but he could have. Anyway, any opportunity, let me rephrase this. Many opportunities don't disappear overnight. Um, but on the other end of the spectrum, many problems also don't disappear overnight. And what I have found in my practicing my steps, practicing these principles in all of my affairs, at least I try, is that if I wait, if I have an idea about how I'm going to handle something, but I say, I'm going to wait until tomorrow. People say, let me sleep on it. I always thought, why sleep on it? Just do it. Well, that's because I didn't understand that if I wait, my idea might get better. It actually might get better. I have found that if I wait, the idea that I think is brilliant actually becomes better because it evolves. I have a different idea, or I replace that idea, or believe it or not, I realized that that idea was terrible and that I could have had some really terrible repercussions from the idea had I carried it out right away. So the questions become, will I feel the same way tomorrow? What if I wait 24 hours? Right now, am I responding out of wisdom or am I responding out of discomfort? Discomfort, I didn't realize this, but I get uncomfortable if I have an idea and I don't implement it right away. I get uncomfortable. It's an emotional urgency. The urgency is fueled by my own generated story in my head. So, what if I wait? Waiting gives me more wisdom. So, waiting gives me emotional clarity. Like my emotions, that emotional urgency starts to settle. Um, it's kind of like, have you ever uh, gone shopping for clothes and you see this amazing sweater and you're like, I have to have that sweater. Have you ever not bought the sweater and walked out and said, if I still want the sweater tomorrow, then I will buy it? I've done that. And more often than not, I don't want the sweater anymore, which is so weird. It's so weird, but the facts become so much clearer when we wait. Like we gain perspective. We gain perspective on the price of the sweater and the need for the sweater. Maybe it's cute, but I go home and I'm like, man, that sweater was so cute. And I tell my husband, I'm like, I want the sweater. And he's like, get the sweater. Why are you waiting? Just get the sweater. And this is actually what he says to me. Then I I'm going to bed at night. I go to put on my jammy jammers, as I call them, and I go into my closet and I look up and I have 20 sweaters up there. And five of them I don't ever even wear. That is gaining perspective, gaining wisdom. So waiting also provides us um, some humility. And that's the case, like when I had these ideas at work. I thought that I knew everything about the situation. I remember one time I had what I thought was a brilliant idea. And I sent I sent a Teams message to my boss and I was like, this is going to make us millions of dollars. I didn't say that to him, but that's what I was thinking. And I used to just say that all the time when I was working for my brother and my dad also. I wanted to have the idea that changed the company. I always, wherever I went, I wanted to have that idea that changed the company. So when I came up with an idea, I was like, I had to share them. I had to share it every time. I had to share the idea because it could be the one. Um, but if I waited, it typically those idea, like I remember that idea I sent to my boss, he immediately came back with why it wasn't going to work. And I felt like that jerk. But that wasn't the case. He had all the information from where he sat. He had all the information. So my idea was coming in without all the information. If I would have waited and done a little more research, I would have been able to see that I didn't have all the information. So waiting gives me that humility and I become open to guidance and feedback to other people. And as I say more and more lately, is like, we weren't meant to think alone, to love alone, to behave alone. We were to heal alone. We were meant to do things together as a human race. Um, Waiting also provides me with emotional sobriety. This waiting is practicing emotional sobriety to me. That's what waiting is. That's what the pause is for me, is learning how to not let every feeling, every emotion drive my behavior and stop confusing impulse with intuition. You know, that's an interesting concept is seeing the difference between impulse and intuition. I like to say that I've got some intuition. I've got some killer intuition. On a separate note, I was just telling my friend who visited on Sunday. I think we were sitting and talking on Monday morning and drinking our coffee, and we were talking about intuition. And I told her, I was like, I have learned over the years how much when I feel that something's not right, or if I feel like we were talking about it specifically regarding other people, when we interact with somebody and we feel like something's not right about them, I'm right. Every time I'm right. It's a matter of listening to it. When I think we're younger, we like, and I'm just talking about women's intuition, okay? No offense to you men out there, but I think as young women in high school and college, I believe that we still have that women's intuition, but it's so um in its infant stages that we don't listen to it. And again, like that goes back to the emotional part. I think our emotions speak louder than our intuition when we're younger. And I think as we get older, our intuition becomes much louder. Okay, so going back to our topic, that was a tangent that I just needed to say because that was impulsive. So, three questions that we can ask ourselves to save us from impulsivity, from a lot of trouble. And this is something that I've heard over and over in my sobriety program. So hold on to your britches. The first question is, does it need to be said? So even though something is true, it doesn't become necessary to say. Not every opinion needs a microphone. Isn't that so applicable right now in this day and age? Also, not every irritation needs discussion. Just because something or somebody is bothering me, it doesn't mean that I need to have a discussion with that person about it. Sometimes silence is wisdom. Sometimes I'm the one that needs to change. Even though I feel like I am right and I feel like they are wrong, even though I feel like they are not behaving in a healthy way, they are not what I am in control of. I'm in control of me. So when I'm in a situation where I'm bothered, does what I feel need to be said? The second question is, does it need to be said right now? Like timing matters. And if I'm in a situation where somebody's bothering me again, if I say something at all, does it need to be said right now? Am I in a situation where maybe I'm going to embarrass them? Even important truths can cause harm when they're delivered in the wrong moment. Um, People are likely to listen to us better when they feel safe and respected. So, does it need to be said now? And finally, does it need to be said by me? Not every problem is my problem to solve. Again, um, not every situation needs my involvement. Sometimes I can insert myself into a lesson that someone else needs to learn. And if I inject myself, I'm actually stealing from their experience. So being right doesn't automatically make us responsible. This really encourage these three questions really encourage the pause. So how does this apply to stroke recovery? I think that I'd like to apply what I've learned in my sobriety program to stroke recovery because I have found that the steps practiced in all of my affairs would also subsume, I used the big word, my stroke recovery. So so what has this taught me about timing and pausing? Recovery, I mean, gosh, I pause more now than I've ever paused in my life. I have to because healing happens on its own timetable. Like recovery cannot be rushed. There is nothing I can do to push harder and produce better results. I am only going to make things worse when I push harder. And by that I mean like, well, maybe if I expose myself to TV a little more, maybe if I open my eyes in the car a little more, I keep proving this to myself over and over again. What I've learned is that the pause, which is rest in recovery, rest is sometimes more productive than the effort. Sleeping is an action. Rest is an action. Um, I have to remind myself of that every day. When I have a schedule, for my day, I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to work on writing my book this morning, which I did. Yay. Yay me. I worked on writing my book a little bit. I'm dictating it now, which has made all the difference. I have a little dictation device and dictations transcription software, and it's going so much better. My head doesn't hurt. I just talk through it, kind of like I do the podcast, and then upload it, transcribe it. And then I do need to go in and edit it a little bit. I mean, it's going to go to an editor eventually, but at least I need it to make sense if there's anything that's off in the transcription. Anyway, um, even though I have something on my schedule, like working on my book, working on the podcast, painting my painting, working on any other craft that I have on my schedule for the day, I am starting to be able to say, okay, you just did your podcast. Now it's time to rest. And rest is the thing. It's the thing I need to do right now. So resting is going to be for the next 15 minutes or hour or whatever time frame I think I need at that time. Um, Rest and patience um and all of the sleep, these are not passive. They are actions in stroke recovery. So, but in the same way, the same principle applies to my relationships with my doctors that can be frustrating, insurance frustrating, decisions that I make for my health and my personal growth and stroke recovery, the timing, the pause, um, deferring action sometimes, they all apply here in stroke recovery as well. And what I have found, because of the steps, and it's just been reinforced in stroke recovery and having a disability, is faith is equivalent in my life to the pause. Um, Delaying action may be perceived by others as procrastination, and it can be procrastination if I'm not doing it intentionally. If I'm doing it because I want to create space for reflection or guidance from a higher power, however you see it, or better judgment. So that pause or moment to get in touch with my faith and my relationship with my higher power, um, that can be looked at as spending time to figure out what the next right thing is. Not the next fastest thing for me to do, but the next right thing. So, there is this confusion that you can feel between avoidance and delaying intentionally. Am I pausing because it's driven by fear? I'm hoping the problem disappears, or I'm just refusing to do anything about it? Or am I pausing because I want to gather more information? I want to seek guidance. I want to wait for the right moment. Um, I want to be, more often than not, acting with intention rather than reacting. So the goal isn't to avoid action for 24 hours. It's to take the right action at the right time. You know, uh, uh, there's a lot of like home decor that says something like pause, pray, something. I can't remember, but and I was going to tell you something funny. Now I have to. My daughter, actually, everybody in my family has this joke about having home decor that has words on it. So, like things like, um, pause, pray, whatever. Or like now that we've moved to a lake community that has a lake, um, having a big sign that says like life is better at the lake and stuff like that. They're like saying how I don't know. We make jokes about it. So the first thing that I did when we moved here in our guest bathroom, I got a big sign that says, oh, now I can't, of course I can't remember what it says right now, but it says something about lake life. So that now whenever they sit on the toilet, they have to look at the, the sign. Anyway, okay. So in closing, I think one of the greatest gifts is learning that I don't have to react to every thought I have, to every emotion, to every circumstance. When I pause, when I pray, when I wait for wisdom, and I truly like practice if this is a good idea tomorrow, if it's a good idea today, it's gonna be a good idea tomorrow. Um, then I believe that whatever opportunity is here right now that needs my attention right now, it will be there tomorrow. It'll still be there. Um, what this reminds me of is something I haven't said for a while, I think. And that's something that I learned in one of my meetings. Somebody said, any problems that I have when I'm getting ready to go to bed, put them on my nightstand and they'll be there in the morning. And that, I was like, that is brilliant because if I put them on my nightstand and I don't take them into the bed with me in my head on my pillow, if I don't allow them to lay on my pillow with me, I go to sleep so much easier. I envision, you guys know that I'm a big envision person. I don't know the right words. Um, if I envision laying them on my nightstand, I just am able to fall asleep so much more quickly. So that also is very applicable to good timing. Um, Wisdom comes from picking them back up in the morning. I used to think when I first heard that phrase, that putting them on my nightstand, I thought, well, what if I don't remember what they are in the morning? Well, guess what? If I don't remember what they are, then I probably didn't need to be holding on to them anyway, right? So, timing is everything. And this was a good revisit of that for me. And I hope that you got something from it. And I also want to welcome our 2 new subscribers. If you are new, I see you. And I want to thank you for joining us. And I will talk to you next time.